Well, to all of you, welcome. Thank you for coming. Above all, for the guest who's come the furthest and to present this book today, thank you very much. It is a privilege to introduce Cardinal Schönborn to you. However, I have a feeling you wouldn't be here if you didn't already know something of what I'm going to say. But in introducing anyone, we can think of the word that Hannah Arendt mentioned, of natality. Before we ever start to be and make our choices, there is a whole gift that has come before us, and that was certainly true, is certainly true of Cardinal Schönborn as well. He was born to a very preeminent family, both for Western Europe and for Eastern Europe. He himself was born in those last months of the Second World War, and as a very young child already was brought in that often violent and terribly confused restructuring of Europe at the end of the Second World War, and shortly after was brought then to the western part of Austria, region known as Vorarlberg. And if you would take these two places of origin in the Sudetenland and in Vorarlberg, you have two of the great gifts of natality that come together in Cardinal Schönborn, that sort of ability to adjust because of a multiplicity of nations and cultures, something that typified the area that we call today the Czech Republic, but also that sort of rootedness and strength that is typical of Vorarlberg. And somehow these two sides of the urbanity, but also the rootedness and the strength, come together in this man in a very special way. He entered the Dominican order in the early 60s and proceeded to study in the normal fashion with his novitiate and basic studies, first of all in northern Germany, but then continuing those studies in Paris. Certainly as he tells the story of his own life, being in Paris for the 1968 Troubles was a defining moment in his life. It helped him see the value of the movement that became known as ressourcement. He decided to complement the Thomistic studies that are part and parcel of Dominican life with a study of the Church Fathers as well. Even before he had finished his doctorate, he had done a work on Sophronius of Jerusalem, which was published. He continued then to work on Christ the Icon as an approach to many of the deepest aspects of the theology of the churches of Eastern Christianity. He then spent some time in Regensburg studying and complementing these studies under a man who was very sympathetic to the ressourcement movement, but also knew the Western patristic literature very well, a man named Joseph Ratzinger. He then became a chaplain for a time in Graz, and it's probably always good to have experience with the sort of chaotic life of students. And he, soon after that, though, became the professor for Catholic dogmatic theology in the German chair at the University of Fribourg in Switzerland. He spent then from 1975 to 1991 in that position. Did leave him a little time for a few other things. In 1980, he became a member of the International Theological Commission. From 1987 to 1992, he was the editing secretary of the Catechism of the Catholic Church. And if you notice that there are one or two references to the Catechism in this particular book that we're presenting today, then that is testimony of someone who knows the depth of discussion that produced that particular document. He was then taken away from the immediate work of teaching to another kind of teaching by being made auxiliary bishop of Vienna in 1991. He became Archbishop of Vienna in 1995, receiving the pallium in 96. He was elevated to cardinal in 98. The same year he became the president of the Austrian Bishops' Conference, a task which still occupies some of his time today. He has honorary doctorates from Prague, Bucharest, Tulane, Steubenville, and not the least from the Dominican School of Philosophy and Theology. He has obviously published a great deal. I wouldn't want to start reading to you all of the titles, but I think it is important today to mention the gift that we've been given by Ignatius Press, which has published a good half dozen of his works, the one we're presenting today included. And very soon there will be another book coming out, edited by Stephen Horn, which includes another contribution by the Cardinal on the topic we are discussing today. One of the important features, I think, of the Cardinal's own biography, but also of his task as ordinary in Vienna, is his way of trying to include a larger segment of culture and discussion. Faith and culture is one way to describe his work. Certainly that sense of East and West Europe has been very predominant. Even as auxiliary bishop, he was made by the bishops of his area the delegate for European questions. He helped sponsor the large church meeting, not just for the nation of Austria, which was typical, but making it for all of Middle Europe. He is very much concerned with these questions of how both science and faith impact on the wider culture. The motto he took becoming Archbishop was, "But I call you friends." The text from John 15, "Vos autem dixi amicos." And in many ways, I would like to think that this is something that fits him personally, but also befits a Dominican bishop quite well. The Dominicans are called in a special way to support that task of the church, which is proclamation, that people will not just practice the faith, but also understand what they're practicing and discuss it. And he has tried to bring these discussions of issues to Europe and to the wider public, not just leaving faith to be sequestered off and science to be sequestered off, but to try and bring these two beautiful realities into some kind of open conversation with each other. The first page of the last chapter of the book that you will have presented today has a great challenge in translating a German word, and I'd like to just end on a reflection about that. The word is Burgfrieden, and it's translated probably as best you can with any one English word as truce. Well, a truce, which would be in German a Waffenstillstand, is something that often will lead to peace. It's something that is it's neutral, but it perhaps is more positive than it is negative. That's not the case with the word Burgfriede. Burgfriede is an uneasy, fragile, superficial kind of peace. It's the kind of peace you have in a household where you say, there's certain things we don't talk about in this house. It's a way of getting by and a kind of slightly dishonest sort of compromise not to discuss something. And what Cardinal Schönborn says at the end of this book, and I think it's something that has motivated his contributions to the discussion all along, is that science and religion are too valuable to leave in that kind of a discussion where they just don't talk about each other. Certainly his book leaves a lot of open questions, and he meant to open up those questions. He meant to get this dialogue going. That is the concluding text in this book. And we've structured today in order to honor that desire. We've invited two of GTU's most prominent scholars on science and religion to also address us with 10 minutes or so of reflection. We can't have a full, accompanying lectures, but we thought at least to give you a sense of what kind of reflection is going on at the GTU about these issues. And they, of course, are meant to help point us to the kinds of questions that the book by Cardinal Schönborn has opened up to us. And so we're very grateful that he's come all this way. We're very grateful for the gift we now have in English. We're very grateful that we too will learn perhaps to find ways to talk about things we just haven't been talking about. Cardinal Schönborn.